I think I said it already, but in case you missed it, my name's Denise, and I'm a therapist here in the UK. But it's lovely to have lots of people from different parts of the world. The previous consulting room sessions have been focused on attachment styles, and I'm going to pretend that most people don't know what attachment styles are, but if you know already, great. That's really wonderful. You're coming um, into a chat knowing quite a lot. But just in case, attachment styles are sort of categories that were developed by John Bowlby, I guess, psychologist in the UK, and it was related to how children related to their parents from quite a young age. They say between sort of up to 3 or 3 to 5. I think research varies on that, but essentially, it's how you found yourself relating to your caregiver. Yeah, so they conducted an experiment where a parent would leave the room. It's called the strange situation. If you want to ever go into YouTube and have a bit of a look. But out of that research, out of the strange sort of experiment that was conducted, there were core attachment styles. And I'm only focusing on the core. And I know there's some really smart listeners out here that are like, what about this type? What about that type? I'm only focusing on secure attachment, avoidant attachment, and anxious attachment. Secure attachment, we are people who feel safe building relationships and trust and are okay with people depending on them, and don't have a problem depending on people. um, that's secure attachment. There isn't actually much more I can say about that. They do, I believe, if I've got my numbers right, they are 40% of the population. So they had healthy caregiving relationships growing up. And so, therefore, developing relationships in adult life isn't problematic, or it's without bumps in the road, I should say. The other two that we've been focusing on are avoidant and anxious. Now, because of the numbers, like I said, 40% is securely attached of the population that we know so far. It tends to be that anxious people and avoidant people date each other a lot more. Um, so thanks, Olivia. So it tends to be that those two, anxious and avoidant, tend to date one another, and that's what we've been talking about. So last week, we mainly focused on avoidant and avoidant daters. So avoidant daters are those people that find closeness and intimacy and vulnerability quite difficult to lean into. In fact, it actually comes across as a bit of a threat to them. So that closeness, that they perceive their partner, they perceive it, or their partner is directly telling them, hey, I would like to feel closer to you. Almost feels quite suffocating to them. So their natural instinct is to avoid, is to withdraw, is to become quite cold, yeah, quite unavailable. So if you are thinking about yourself or people in your life that might be avoidant, those are sort of the clues. They might struggle to really settle down and get close to someone. Questions that their lover might ask them, like, tell me about your childhood, tell me about your family. Actually, that's really threatening, because it's like, oh my gosh, why do you want to know? And if we take it back to childhood, really what they're thinking is, in the past, I've had people, trusting adults, caregivers, that have promised to get close to me, but when I tried to get close to them, they then often rejected me. So in order to protect myself from that rejection, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this barrier in place. Yeah. So that's what we talked about. I don't want to go too much into avoidant characteristics this week. So we talked about how to cope with that, how to be their lover in that instance, like what happens when, it feels like, they're on the verge of cutting you off, or they do cut you off if they start ghosting you, where that's coming from, what that means. Um, Oh, yeah. So Olivia has a question. So I'm going to pause and just answer your question there. Oh, okay. Hey, Missy, you said you didn't know that was a thing. Um, so Olivia, going back to you said, am I speaking about attachment only in relationships with parents, but also in partnerships? So, um, attachment starts off probably in your parental relationships. and or your caregiving relationships or your trusted adult, but we're looking at it in the concept of how what that looks like when we're dating. Because of course, this is table and it's run by Soul, and we're interested in it. So your follow-up question about books that you can read more, there's tons of stuff on attachment on YouTube, and also a lot of people in the chat were posting up books that they recommended. A good one that I kept seeing pop up was Attachment. I think it's just a book called Attachment. So that's the one I can remember, but if anyone has other recommendations, drop it in the chat for Liv. Does anyone have any questions so far um, about attachment styles? No? I guess from my sort of experience, what I come across both in my personal life and in my professional life, when people are talking about their relationship issues, a lot of the times it's people say, oh, like, I don't understand why he or she is so cold, why they're so withdrawn, and this will happen also in friendships. I don't know what I did. They start questioning themselves, start questioning their actions, and most of the time it's because they're coming across an avoidant individual and don't know, uh number one, that they're avoidant, and number two, that that's even a thing, and number three, how do you cope with it, and how do you not feel rejected, because that can often be what it's like. It's like, oh, things were going so great, and I'm not doubting that it probably was. They just had a really hard time kind of pacifying themselves, making themselves feel safe, in your presence. And that doesn't mean that it won't happen in time, but oftentimes they sabotage the relationship so that they don't even get to see that they could feel safe, they could feel loved, and they could feel cared for by another individual. Hey Chris, welcome. You said you're listening from Long Island. Okay. Oh, Olivia, you've got a question. Okay. Just give me 1 second and I'm gonna allow you to speak. Just unmute yourself. Welcome. Hey Olivia.
Oh, thank you very much. This is
Very
first
welcome.
time speaking here.
It's okay. Welcome and thank you.
Yeah, my question is like from my experience from my last relationship. I feel what you describe now, it comes maybe very similar to the behavior of my partner, which who rejected me
Mm,
when it came to like serious questions like what is the next step? Like, I would like to, like be closer, like become a wife,
mm,
get married. And I had this feeling that because of the trauma from his childhood,
mm-hmm,
he felt maybe like in defense, he didn't want to go this far. Maybe he
mm,
had like bad experience because of the relationship with his parents.
right.
And my question is, how can we deal with this rejection? Is there some kind of possibility we can change his mind? I mean, like with some techniques,
Mm,
how can we accept that he rejected us because of maybe broken heart from
yeah.
his childhood?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I pray for him
Yeah. That's yeah.
still, but I mean, something what we experienced in early childhood takes a long time during our life to be healed.
Mm-hmm,
And maybe only God can do this healing. So
mm-hmm,
my question is
yeah.
from psychology, if there
Mm-hmm,
is something like some technique
yeah.
we could also be able to help these people who
Yeah.
feel this way. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you, Livia. So your question actually matches Missy's in the chat. So yeah, I will quickly address that. Thank you for your question. I'm going to make you a listener again, and then I'll get to your question. But thank you for sort of sharing and being brave to taking the mic. Okay, so yes, that's a really common question. A couple of things that Livia was saying was like, how do I kind of cope with not taking it personally, not feeling rejected? How can we help them? First of all, I'm hoping that this platform is not just for people who want to help the avoidant person or the anxious person, but also for people who want to understand themselves. The most important thing is that you first understand yourself and know what your triggers might be. No one apart from Jesus needs to play the savior role. So you cannot make a person be something that they're not. And again, we are thinking about personality, right? This isn't going to be something that was just developed the other day. They've been like this since their childhood, since perhaps a trauma. But sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that it took something traumatic. So I don't want you to feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility to fix someone. What I would like for you to first do is understand yourself and then understand them, and hopefully have some compassion towards them. I think we can't go anywhere without first understanding. And, like the Bible talks about putting others first. This is one such way. The other thing is, for the avoidant person, is to actually not take it personally. If you understand it as a threat system, that this person feels your closeness, your wishes and desires for intimacy, emotional intimacy, and all of the other things that come along with it, as they see it as a like legitimate threat, you can kind of have a bit more understanding to say, okay, right, so I need to make them feel as safe as possible. Because if someone has a phobia of snakes, we're not just going to dunk them in a pit full of snakes. We're going to want to make them feel safe. Right. We might not endorse all of their avoidance behaviors from the thing that they fear the most, but we want to make sure that we show them that we understand. So communicating clearly. I can tell that maybe my questions, they kind of put your back up. I don't know. I noticed that you got a little bit defensive when I was asking this or when I said this. I first of all just want to let you know that I don't want to overwhelm you in any way. And if I ever say anything that does overwhelm you, can we make an agreement that you'll at least let me know? Instead of, because I noticed maybe last week I couldn't reach you, um, and then that made me worry about you. Could we come to an agreement that instead of you pulling back so much that I start to think, is it me? Could, could you could you just say something? Or could we have a code word when you start to feel overwhelmed? And ask them what pace will work for you, because oftentimes what we might think are just normal, legitimate questions that will, like, oh, where do you think this relationship is going? It is ringing alarm bells. Saying that you want to see them 3, 4 times a week. That's again sending off alarm bells in the avoidant person's head. So we want to try and not make someone feel in danger. So I think that's a really good kind of place to start. Of course, praying for them, but praying for your communication style as well, praying that you know the right words to say. But yeah, just showing them that, okay, you notice this pattern, and show them that you've got a willingness for them to work. As the avoidant person, I said this last week, it's about recognizing yourself that these are your patterns, but also thinking about what is different between now and what was then. The thing that used to make you feel quite threatened in the past, maybe, like your parent is going to reject you, or they're going to say, oh, I don't have time for you, you're not important. Is that really what's happening now? Has that person that you're trying to fall in love with or be close with or be friends with, are they saying those same things? Are they likely to reject you? Can you take what they're saying at face value? And also thinking about, okay, well, what do I really want for myself in the future? And then working towards that and recognizing when you start to self-sabotage. So I don't think all of the onus is on the other partner. I think the avoidant person has to take responsibility as well. I hope that answers your questions. I think it was Livia and Yeah, Livia and someone else had asked the question. Okay. So yeah, I hope it answers it. I have another question. What can be a reason for when a person avoiding relationships, even if one can like someone really hard? I don't think I understand that, but I'll read on. You said, or fall in for an unchristian person, even knowing that there is almost no chance for success. So the latter part, I said something similar last week, where avoidant people can tend to go for relationships that are long distance, or someone that it's just not going to work out with, like someone that's maybe just as unemotionally unavailable as them or physically unavailable. So they might work on the road for long periods of time. They can probably move into those relationships because there is less of an expectation on them there. So yeah, that might fall into that category. Um, Thanks, Trudy, for posting your favorite emoji. Mine too, side eye. Hey, Samantha. Yeah. Okay. So, Chris, you said after your breakup some years ago, I'm scared of proposing to another again. How can I get someone? No, how can get someone I can love again, and it's possible to meet or start a good one? So this is about taking risk. And again, it depends on kind of what your attachment styles are. We had some people in the room last week that are securely attached, and they see the end goal as being worthy of the risk to take now. So it depends on that. But absolutely, I believe that you can find love again. It's about learning from the past relationship. We cannot just dust ourselves off and say, you know what, I was perfect in that last relationship. There's nothing for me to change, so I'm going to present the same me again. Now, I'm not saying the reason your relationship broke up is because of you. It might not be. But I don't think any relationship ends 100% with one person being at fault. There is, even if it's 5%, there's usually something on our part that we need to learn from. So, what can you learn from that past relationship? And what new habits or new healthy, it might even be boundaries. So it doesn't mean kind of like opening up your doors to everyone, but thinking about, like, actually, what are the things that I don't want. Like, what have I learned from past relationships that, do you know what, maybe I don't like that type of personality or that trait? And being boundaried with yourself. Like, okay, you're gonna stick to what you've said, or you're gonna just bamboozle all your decisions. So I think those are some yeah, just little uh, tips on how to dust yourself off and make sure like you are ready. There's no rush. Like, hopefully no one really has a gun to your head. Take your time, make sure you're healed, make sure you're ready, because there's nothing worse than two broken and hurt people trying to come together and love each other when there is just a chasm of hurt in the middle that's not going to get addressed because both people are so consumed with their own past hurts. That's just my tip. Cole, hey, from the Philippines. Hey, Shah, you said preach for me. There would be no solution or words that would change my mind or take that fear away. I can be the only one to make the step, and I just hope they stick around in the process. Yes, we do. Fully hear you there. Hey, John from Oregon. Chris said, "Am I sure?" Oh, okay. No, I think you were talking to Trudy. Sorry. Nuyari says, I think I might be avoidant. Okay, shall we jump into anxious? Because I've been looking forward to talking about anxious. Oh, hey, John, just to kind of bring you into it, we are talking about attachment styles. So the previous weeks we've talked about secure, what kind of talked about secure, mainly avoidant, and today we're going to be talking about anxious um, daters, right? And both to try and understand yourself and to understand the people that you might come across. We always want to start with a space for compassion. Yeah, that's always where we want to start. Um, okay, so let's go. Anxious people now. What's slightly different? Um, I'm just going to double check that I've got yes, perfect. Cole ended by saying, after all, we're not perfect and we all have imperfections. 100,000%. Thank you. I'll head back into the chat in a minute, but I do want to make sure that we have enough time for the, people who feel anxious. So, anxious people. are those people who absolutely feel like they can gain more love. They would like more closeness, more intimacy, more kissing, more hugs. Like physical touch is good. It's like being in the presence of another person. They can never really kind of get enough of, which is the complete, you can see, opposite to avoidant people. All of those things I've just mentioned would be an allergic reaction to someone who is avoidant. But anxious people, they always feel in their relationships or even when they're single, I can, I will, I need to, and I desire to have more intimacy with a partner. Yeah. However, the problem comes in when they don't feel like they get that from their partner. All right. So they don't feel like they get enough physical touch. They don't feel they get enough, closeness. The bonding doesn't feel enough. They feel in actuality that there's more. We can do more. And are they holding back from me? And then the doubt comes in. And that's where, the anxious terminology comes in, because it builds up this anxiety of what is wrong? Why don't they want to love me with the same intensity that I want to love them? Yeah. Um, I I don't know if anyone sort of experienced that, or that's kind of sounds familiar to them, whether they've experienced a person that is anxious like that or they themselves are. But if you do want to put your hand up and share, so yes, there is this eagerness to kind of have more. And so if we take it back a layer and go back to childhood, what this would have been developed from is from a parent, um, again, that promises or a caregiver that might promise them love and attention, but actually they underdeliver, or they just didn't even pay enough attention. So this person, this child, always grew up kind of wanting more love, more closeness to that caregiver, but never ever kind of feeling like they got it. They almost got the opposite. They got rejection. They were kind of pushed aside. They were not prioritized. Yeah. So there is always this hunger, this seeking for more love, for more closeness. Yeah. Um, so what can tend to happen is that if you mix two, an avoidant and an anxious person, they're probably going to kind of rub each other up the wrong way, because of course the avoidant person is going to be withdrawing and the anxious person is going to be like, I know that they're withdrawing, it's me, it's personal, it's me they're rejecting, they don't like me, there's something about me and the relationship that they they despise. So an anxious person might try to not say anything, right? That they'll make an excuse or in their head to say, oh, maybe they're just having a bad day at work, maybe they're just this, that, and the other. But eventually they can't help but to sort of address it. And it's I laugh because it's in the addressing that oftentimes the avoidant person, but kind of is like a deer in headlights, because they're like, oh no, this is too much, kind of confrontation. But that anxious person can't help but express what they feel, because they want answers, right? They want to know what is going on. Why don't you reciprocate the attention or the love that I'm showing you? So they'll bring it up, and usually it'll start to be accusations. So, you are this, you do you notice that you don't pay me enough attention, I want more. And it can come across as quite childlike. And the terminology that they might use can be quite childish, like childlike. you know um I need more from you. I need, this. I want this. And again, it sounds quite demanding. And of course, they just want to feel better. They want to feel that they are in an equal partnership. They want to feel like their partner cares about them. But again, if we're thinking about this pairing of anxious and avoidant people, it just doesn't work so well. Yeah, it doesn't work, because that anxious person is thinking, yeah, they're telling me off. They're being mean. Yeah. So, and to be honest, we talked about self-sabotaging behaviors. I saw that question in the chat just now. We talked about self-sabotaging behaviors in avoidant people last week, but there are also of behaviors that an anxious person might do. So that might look like calling numerous times a day. I had a conversation recently with a friend. It was something on TV where the wife was saying she calls her husband like 20 times a day. She just wants to find out how he's doing. And the husband was really put off by this because he was like, I'm at work. That's too much. Um, I was trying to explain to my friend like what the person is trying to, what the wife is trying to get from her husband, which is actually just reassurance that you still care about me. I'm still important to you, right? You're thinking about me. Am I thought of? Am I loved? But the husband, of course, was naturally seeing this as an interruption to his day, and actually it comes across as you're doing too much. You're making me feel uncomfortable. And it can almost feel with an anxious person that it's hard to pacify. It like when is enough enough? So even if they're in a secure relation, if they're in a relationship with a secure person, that person might find themselves reassuring them all the time because it can feel like that bottle doesn't get filled up. So you might increase your date nights to 2 nights a week, but then next week they might still feel like, well, actually, I didn't see you on Saturday, so that's a problem. I want to see you more. And other person is actually having to yield way heavier on your side and your wills and your demands than they might feel comfortable with, whether that's with an anxious person or with a secure person. Are people following so far? I hope so. So just going back to the chat. Um, so Nadia asked about self-sabotaging behaviors. It might just be like ghosting someone, withdrawing, starting arguments where there aren't, and it doesn't matter. Like it's not of importance. Like, oh, just I can't believe you wore the blue jumper today. Why? Like when the arguments don't really make sense, those sort of things, so that the other person can, feel bad or you know want to spend time away from them, because actually that still gives the avoidant person the room that they need, because it's room that they need to feel them like themselves again and not feel like someone's almost breathing down their neck. Yes, someone mentioned Livia again, said everyone has a different language of love. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, theirs can be misunderstood. Missy asked, do you think a healthy relationship could offer some healing to an anxious person's fears, or do you think that approach is innately in an anxious person, so that style transcends relationships? I do think absolutely it's possible for there to be a healthy relationship. I don't know about this healing. I think it's about each person feeling safe. You don't I don't know. My mind, the way it works, it's like these people, we don't need to necessarily be healed. Our personalities are our personalities, but we can certainly feel safer. I don't think there's anyone that wants to get into a relationship and doesn't feel emotionally safe and contained. That's what we're seeking for, rather than trying to fix, because not we're technically we're just all broken, and thank God for Christ, because he's the one that makes us whole. But we still have to contend in the world with all of our personality types and learn how to communicate our needs and our wants, but also hopefully with compassion understand other people's needs and wants. And these sort of conversations go a long way in that. John asked, can people struggle with avoidant attachment because their relationship come easy and they haven't experienced needing to put effort in relationships for people to stay in their lives? Interesting. So I don't necessarily think that that might be the case. I think they just haven't had enough experience of, it's like, if you have a dog phobia and you walk into a park and you see a dog and you constantly run away, you never get to learn that not every single dog, and it's very unlikely that any dog is going to run up and bite you, because you're always escaping. So yeah, I guess from that sort of perspective, if they're always avoiding and self-sabotaging, yeah, they never get to realize that some people can stay and be trusted and develop close units. And when they probably look out at other relationships, they think, oh, that's just a fluke. Like, that's good for them, but it will never happen to me. No one would fully ever know me and accept me. Oh, sorry, Leanne, that oh, if yeah, I'll definitely feed that back. If anyone else is experiencing the cutting in and out, yeah, please let us know. Sam said, too much. Text me, don't call me. And you know what? Actually, that's a good compromise. I think that's what that couple ended up doing. The husband was like, "Hey, if text me, but also you don't want 100 text messages, but I'll reach out to you in my lunch break." So it is about coming to these sort of compromises where you can still reassure your anxious partner that you haven't forgotten them, but they don't need to keep calling you. They don't need to keep checking if you're okay. So yeah. Um, Samantha, you said, I think anxious attachment can be healed through therapy and absolutely with intimacy with Jesus. Okay, so Missy, glad that you can hear well. Livia said, wow, I'm surprised what you are talking about. You experienced it, and when you look back, you see yourself as anxious. Ah, perfect. So, my recommendation is to do as much kind of inner work. First of all, put this to prayer now that you've kind of recognized yourself as being an anxious person. Put that to prayer and ask God to help you understand yourself more. He loves you just the way you are. So it's about you learning to love yourself. The other thing I would say is get yourself a really good therapist, and don't just, kind of, if you're getting a private therapist, just don't accept the first therapist that you meet. Try and find someone that you're going to feel comfortable sharing these really intimate parts of yourself with. Yeah, and read any sort of books that's been placed in the chat. So the attached, was it attached that something Lark posted earlier? I would recommend those. Hey, Jennifer. Oh, someone says sorry, Jennifer, you were just helping Leanne out. I understand now. Um, okay. Okay, great. Everyone said, oh, someone said, well explained. Hi from MT. Trudy, Livia, we should communicate with a person we're in a relationship what our love language is. Yeah. And we should show love to each other the way the other person seeks to be loved. 100%. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry that you're having those difficulties. Oh, love languages. Okay, Robert, thank you for the recommendation. That's the other thing. If you have any recommendations of things that we could cover, I'm collating ideas at the moment. So after the attachment styles, I was thinking about looking for red flags in relationships. Someone suggested earlier to me today narcissism, like what that looks like, and also healing from narcissism once you've been in a narcissistic encounter with someone. Um, okay, yeah. Someone said, sorry, Kisha. Sorry, I've forgotten how to speak English now. You said it seems like avoid issue, and I think you're right. At the bottom is trust, that you're not feeling like they can yet trust you, but they do want intimacy. I think all of us do. I think that's what the one thread that runs through all of these attachment styles is that um we want intimacy, and we want to feel trusted. We want to feel trust and be trusted. However, these sort of behaviors get in the way of that. So yeah, I think you're right. All relationships not perfect, only the couple. Interesting. Okay, cool. So Oh, there's more questions. I'm sorry. I am going to prioritize the chat today. So Samantha, you said, oh, sorry. Chari said, can an experience with an avoidant person tip someone over from being secure to anxious? No, because it doesn't. I can see that you might have some behaviors afterwards that might make you more cautious, but you cannot. I don't believe you can change your whole attachment style. But sometimes we do have different attachment styles with different people in our lives, if that makes sense. So even whilst you're growing up, although overwhelmingly you might be securely attached, you might find with certain people in your life, you might have an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment. So, these are not necessarily locked in stone, but you can definitely be more cautious. Like, I'm never going to get hurt again by that. And people tend to do that after they've been with an avoidant person. um you know what, I'm gonna keep my cards close to my chest. I'm not gonna say I love you first. I'm not gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna just keep my distance. Yeah, all of those things I think can happen, where people start to put up barriers. But we just have to be careful why we're putting up barriers. Boundaries are good. Barriers are really hard to climb over. Yeah. So boundaries, if you think about it, can be like a fence around your house, with a door in it. So you choose what you allow in and out. A boundary sounds like a really high wall. And that means if in order for someone to come through onto the other side to meet you, they really have to climb. And that might take a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and people might be put off by that. So let's be careful that we're putting up boundaries rather than barriers. Okay. Samantha asks, oh, so it's a personality, or mentions, oh, it's a personality type that a person has for the rest of their lives. It's like a part of you, but it's like, imagine, we like metaphors in CBT. So imagine like kind of having a dog or a pet. I'm going to go with a dog because dogs usually need training. And so, yeah, when you don't necessarily know what your personality type is or what your attachment style is, like, this doesn't have to be your, first of all, disclaimer, 100% your identity forever and ever. Like, Christ gives us a new identity, and we're that first and foremost. But however, we are wanting to be aware of the things that inform our relationships. So this is just one of those things. Yeah. So going back to the metaphor, when we don't know our attachment styles, for example, it's like that untrained dog. It's just, messing all over the place, waking, barking at 3 a.m. or whatever, because we don't know that what we don't know. So we might be self-sabotaging. We might be, dating the same people again and again and expecting a different result. However, when we know what our personality and attachment styles are, we can then be aware of it. Right. And that's the training of the dog. So we say, okay, dog, you go out for your walk at 5 p.m. We say this is when you have your lunch, breakfast, and dinner. Right. So we're more in control of it. Things are not just being done to us, they're being orchestrated by us because we understand the benefit and also the downsides of it. I hope that makes it clear. What would you say to someone who finds it hard to trust another person? Ask yourself, why do you find it hard to trust another person? What is it that you find hard to trust? What is it? What are the things that are triggering? What are they triggering in you that's making you not want to trust them? And then start to look back, like look at all the different relationships in your life and think, are there any themes here? Okay, I didn't trust that person because they said they wanted, um, you know, they wanted us to be married in 5 months, and that kind of put me off. Or I didn't trust this person because they were really narky or upset with me one time, and yeah, that set off alarm bells, so I cut them off. What are the things that are triggering? And once you start to notice the themes, yeah, you can usually just pull on it like a thread, and you'll find where they started off. Like, what is it about those things that um, that is kind of triggering to you? Yeah, like where did it come from? Does it remind you of your mum shouting at you when you were 6? Does it remind you of an authoritarian dad that, told you you couldn't speak at the dinner table and your opinions, children should be seen and not heard? Like those, we the beautiful thing I realize about relationships is that we tend to repeat the same patterns. And again, because of course we don't know it. We think, oh, each scenario is unique and dynamic, but actually, and that's the work of being with a therapist. Once you sit down and start to look at the themes, you start to notice that they're quite common, that we do repeat it, even if it is the man in the supermarket that you just had a random encounter with, even if it's your neighbor. Some of those themes come up again and again, but we're not attuned to kind of seeing it that way. Okay. So, John, have there been discussions on what needs those attachment styles typically? Yep. Yes, there are. Thank you again, Optimistic Lark. Also, I joined because I thought we were going to discuss the topic of faith and therapy mixed together. Don't know much because this is my first time. Yes. So there are themes of kind of like faith first. Your identity is first in Christ. But again, my great motto, not mine, I didn't create it, but I'm a big believer in Jesus and therapy. So Jesus first and therapy. But as Christians, I think we need to be armed with knowing who we are. So yeah, it's not going to be hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. This is a Christian space and we talk about mental health and psychological themes. No, it's okay. Welcome, Harry. I don't mind you joining late. Um, Okay, so you said John again said you'd be more interested in hearing why faith and therapy are needed to go hand in hand. Because Jesus has given us therapy. I don't know why we don't use more of it. I think there is such a beauty when we know ourselves, when we can understand others. Like imagine yourself as like a really beautiful flower, but when we come into the earth, we are just a seed, right? And these experiences that we have throughout life, they water it, they put a bit of sunshine in it. And as those experiences water and, give us energy, that seed breaks and this flower hopefully blossoms and becomes beautiful. How big your flower becomes, how beautiful it becomes, comes from a place of exploration, right? If we only look at one source only, and that's a great source, by the way, your faith in Jesus, if we only look at it and neglect all of the other ways, because we know that God uses so many other experiences and themes and creations on earth to develop us, if we only looked at one, that flower might just remain a bud. But the more we explore, the more we allow ourselves to know ourselves and why God created us in the unique way that He did, why He knitted us in our mother's womb, the more that flower allows itself to grow and blossom. So that's why therapy. I hope um, that helps. Now, while you said, how do you trust once you got hurt? Understand why you got hurt. Um, work things out. I think like people don't use enough time to like people don't use enough time to like heal. Like again, I keep saying like what's the rush? If you know that you've been through an experience, I don't care if it's been 3 months. I don't care if you only dated him for 6 weeks. Sometimes we can have a really close encounter with people in a short space of time or a really long space of time. We need to heal from them. So take your time, unpack it, cry if you need to, boo boo on your shirt if you need to, eat the ice cream if you need to, talk to your friends about it, talk to a therapist about it if you need to. Unpack it and learn from it. Yeah. Learn how your trust was wounded. It's not all going to be the same. Hence why I'm hesitant to kind of tell you, like, oh, 6 steps to regain your trust in humanity again. Like there's a really great Jonathan Reynolds song called People. and it just talks about how we can get wounded by people, and God, can you heal us from people? You can heal us from lots of different things, but can you heal us from people? The hurt that we can experience from the people that we're supposed to love can be great, and taking the time to unpack situations is where it's at. I can't advocate anymore. Like, I just think sometimes, I don't know, societal pressures, cultural pressures, whatever, are really pushing us to just like go from a relationship to another relationship. You'll be fine. Date, 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 date. Okay, cool. If you're ready for that, go for it. But actually take the time that you need to just be like, whew, okay, that happened. What did I do? How did that person make me feel? What did they say that triggered up old wounds? And actually, those old wounds, have I dealt with them? Like, go for it. Deep dive into it. And if you're usually a person that doesn't want to access your emotion, do it all the more. Because I think when we are avoidant of accessing our emotion for whatever sort of fear, good things happen. Yeah, to go through that dark corridor, like God is with you in that. You will make it through, and you become a better person. And that means the person that you're going to end up with is going to get an even better version of you. And who doesn't want that? Like, be the best version of you that you can, as cliche as Instagrammy as that sound. Oh, sorry. um okay, so Janelle, how do you go about finding a good therapist who will offer guidance in line with biblical principles? So usually, like in the UK for us, there is a Christian Association of Therapists. So I would always recommend, in your area, whatever country you live in, please look for that. Yeah, especially if you're looking for biblical principles. And then once that happens, think of it as like an interview process. Really, most therapists tend to offer a free session. So see if you can. I wouldn't go like over the top with this. Don't start seeing 10 therapists, but I would say three or four. Get a good flavor of seeing like if is their therapeutic style and their own way of providing therapy. Is that going to be something you can get with? So yeah, treat it as a bit of an interview, and like think about the type of therapist you want. um do you want someone who's just going to be, quite linear and straightforward, or do you want someone that's really going to go into the emotion of things? And ask them what they've been trained in. So absolutely treat it as an interview process. Yeah, and if you are in the UK, I think I posted it last time, but I'll post it again. There is a really great group of therapists who are part of the Christian Association of, uh, yeah, therapists, who are really good. It's in the chat right now. Yeah, absolutely, Missy. They don't put words in your own mouth. Yeah, they should. Yeah, perfect. Um, so many learning on. Oh, I've not tried Trent Shelton's channel. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I see everyone's kind of supporting each other in the chat as always. So just before we close, being aware of the time, it's been a really good. Hopefully, I hope you feel the same way. Good space to kind of talk about these themes. But I want to give some tips for anxious people who are, who might be dating. Yeah. So the first thing is kind of noting that when if you do find yourself dating an avoidant person, take stock. Take stock of what's actually happening, especially when those doubts start running through your mind and it feels almost like a hurricane or something of doubt. That first of all, things may not be as bad as they seem. Yeah. Quiet or low amounts of contact during the day doesn't mean he or she doesn't care about you at all or is sick and tired of you. Their actions are not necessarily meant to, convey rudeness or that they're mean. It might simply be a way of them trying to regain a sense of balance in their own mind, in their own psyche. You are not a bad person, for wanting more intimacy or closeness to them. You're not crazy. You're not needy. These are very natural desires. Feeling close and known by someone is nice, and we tend to want nice things and experiences. However, how you go about seeking that closeness may be the problem area that we need to tweak a little bit. It might be making that person feel quite triggered. It might be making them feel quite threatened or claustrophobic. Perhaps being too direct in your approach and how you demand things in order to, to seek this closeness might actually be misconstrued, sorry, as being aggressive or too direct. People don't necessarily like to be on the receiving end of that. And that I'm sure you don't want to be seen as someone who's aggressive or angry. Yeah. People don't like to be forced to do something. So it's just about being mindful about how you gently still just say, hey, I know I saw you last week, but I'd really love to see you on Tuesday. Or how can we compromise and, spend a little bit more time, rather than saying, I really need to see you. It's just like, it's crazy now. It's been like, what, 7 days? Like, so thinking about the gentleness approach. And I think our Christian values follows through with that. If you are the avoidant person with who's dating, sorry, if you are dating an avoidant person, you might just need to be a little bit more subtle in how you approach them for intimacy, and also being aware that if you put a little bit of distance in, it's actually quite enticing for the avoidant person, rather than going full throttle. Just kind of just being a little bit more subtle in what you need. Yeah. And it is important to have compassion. I've said this word a million times already. So have compassion for them rather than criticize them directly, either to their face, or even when you're talking about them to your friends, like calling them weird, or, oh, they're just so weird, and, oh gosh, who doesn't want to spend more time? Be careful with how you speak about people, and just understand that we are all a little bit damaged, like, and we're all trying to get to a place where we are going to be okay. And thanks to God, He does that finishing work. But appreciating that we live in a broken world and we're broken people. Yeah, we need a little bit more patience and the willingness to kind of look at our own selves and look at how we might be triggering the situation. I hope that's helpful. Um, Okay, interesting. Someone mentioned life coaching. You know, if it depends what the direction is. I think it all depends about what your goals are. Someone was trying to give me said, "I hopeful pheasant said, hope she sees these. Wow, what a blessing, that's Sophia. Okay, I'm going to spend the last few minutes just going through the chat. I want to make sure I don't miss much. Okay, I think I read through all of these. Someone said, Christabel said, I find it hard to trust because my husband, yeah, cheated. Yeah, that will do it. After 19 years and is still lying about it. So yeah, even worse, because you know it happened, or most likely happened, but the denial just does more work, more damage, and you're constantly having to bring it to God to ask for forgiveness, or the ability to forgive that person. Okay, thank you. Oh, so I am on Instagram. I am so sorry. What is my Instagram name? Jeez, I am ill prepared. It's Denise Better. I am on private, so apologies for that. So it's Denise, DeNiseBetter. So follow me on that. Um, yes, Jesus first, then therapy. No, this is my only podcast that I do on here, Samantha. Um, I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it so far. If you have any topics that you'd like us to, or me to consider, or Salt to consider in terms of faith and therapy, please put it in the chat before we go. We've literally got 2 minutes. Spiritual and temporal is necessary. We have a soul and a body. What sort of counseling is best for bad? Oh, don't let's not name it bad attachment styles. Just attachment styles will do. There are so many different types. I would say psychotherapy. Anything, psychotherapy, ACT, so acceptance, sort of any type of like counseling. I'm hoping Optimistic Lark has put some in the chat as well. Yes, wonderful. I've gone to Bible college and been a counselor. Amazing, John. That's great. Yes, CBT is good for breaking patterns. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you so, so much. Before you go, I want to give you the link for next week's uh, the consulting table. So that will be our fourth episode. I'm going to post it in the chat now and hope that you can join me next week. Okay, someone said that they have a counselor already. Okay, yes, perfect. Thanks, Janelle. Yeah, it's at Denise Better. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. Sorry for using acronyms. I should have just said what it is. Remembering the past experience every time something triggers. Does this mean not having peace with whatever happened? Yeah, our body keeps a score. That's another great book to read. We'll talk about trauma at some point on this platform. Yeah, I would if you've got any sort of trauma, I like please run, don't even walk, go and get some help, go and get therapy. Some of those things that have happened to us, even if we're not having flashbacks actively or nightmares, like they're still affecting us in different ways. So please, if you know that you are struggling, like please go and help, get the help that you need. Okay. Although no one came other than one person, one brave soul came and shared, took the mic. I appreciate everyone being here. I'm sorry if I didn't get through your message. I really, really appreciate you being a part of our conversation.